सस्ते कर्ज के लिए आपको अभी इंतजार करना होगा। आरबीआई महंगाई दर में और कमी आए बगैर ब्याज दरें घटाने के लिए तैयार नहीं। वहीं जानबूझकर लोन नहीं चुकाने वालों पर आरबीआई का डंडा चलने वाला है। आरबीआई ऐसे लोगों के लिए फंडिंग के दूसरे रास्ते बंद करने की तैयारी कर रहा है, वहीं आचर बदलने की वकालत की। देखिए आरबीआई गवर्नर रघुराम राजन से जी बिजनेस की एक्सक्लूसिव बातचीत।
स्वागत है आपका हमारी खास पेशकश में। हमारे साथ आज एक बहुत ही खास मेहमान मौजूद हैं, एक ऐसी शख्सियत जिनका रिश्ता हम सबसे जुड़ा हुआ है, चाहे वो महंगाई हो या फिर ब्याज की दरें, हम अक्सर इन्हें याद करते हैं। हमारे साथ हैं आरबीआई गवर्नर श्री रघुराम राजन। सर, स्वागत है आपका। एंड फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल थैंक यू फॉर स्पीकिंग टू इंडियाज लार्जेस्ट न्यूज नेटवर्क जी मीडिया। एंड मेरा जो पहला सवाल है, आई वुड से इट्स ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ आवर 100 मिलियन व्यूअर्स, और वो सवाल ये है कि यू नो देयर इज अ बिलीफ कि देश के अच्छे दिन आए हैं, इकोनॉमी में रिवाइवल हो रहा है एंड बॉटमिंग आउट प्रोसेस हो चुका है, बट एक बोरोवर के लिए अच्छे दिन कब आएंगे? व्हाट इज योर टेक?
अभी हम महंगाई को कम करने में लगे हुए हैं। जब महंगाई कम हो जाएगी तब अच्छे दिन आएंगे बोरोवर के लिए। प्रॉब्लम ये है आजकल कि जब इन्फ्लेशन महंगाई 7-8% है तो डिपॉजिटर सोचता है कि जो बैंक इंटरेस्ट रेट दे रही है वो काफ़ी है कि नहीं, और अगर बैंक वो इंटरेस्ट रेट को कम करती है, आजकल कितना मिलता है 8.5-9%, अगर वो कम करेगी तो डिपॉजिट ग्रोथ कम हो जाएगी। और अगर डिपॉजिट ग्रोथ कम होती है तो बैंक ऋण नहीं दे सकती है लोगों को। तो इसलिए जब तक महंगाई कम नहीं होती है तब तक वो बोरोवर के लिए अच्छे दिन नहीं आएंगे।
बट कैन ही होप कि जल्द आएंगे? देयर इज अ लाइट एट द एंड ऑफ द टनल। कैन ही होप? देखना पड़ेगा, अगले साल होगा, इफ नॉट दिस ईयर।
देखना पड़ेगा कि महंगाई तो कम हो रही है। पिछले महीने जून में 7.3% थी। अभी आगे देखते हैं। आजकल सब्जियों का दाम बढ़ रही है, तो देखना पड़ेगा मॉनसून कैसे चलती है। अगर एक जून में तो रेन्स वर वेरी वेरी वीक,
राइट।
If it strengthens,
we have seen revival.
We have seen revival in July, but not in the northwest. Now northwest is, some parts are well irrigated, other parts are not. अब देखना पड़ेगा। तो biggest risk to inflation is I think food prices and oil prices. तो let us see how they play out. I can't predict how the monsoon will go. In fact, even the meteorological
it's a challenge for them also.
For them it's a challenge. So let us see how it goes.
लेकिन सर, कल आपने जो पॉलिसी स्टेटमेंट था उसमें आपने एक बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज कही थी, एंड आई वुड लाइक टू ड्रॉ योर अटेंशन टू दैट। आपने कहा कि लेट्स फाइट द एंटी इन्फ्लेशन फाइट वंस एंड फॉर ऑल। नाउ इसका क्या मतलब निकाला जाए कि मे बी यू आर विलिंग टू वेट एंड यू नो मे बी डिग इन दैट लिटिल लॉन्गर अगर जरूरत पड़ती है तो, बट यू वांट टू सॉर्ट दिस प्रॉब्लम वंस एंड फॉर ऑल? क्या ये इसका अर्थ निकाला जाए?
नहीं, मैंने इसलिए कहा क्योंकि पिछली बार ये अगर हम देखते हैं ये 5 साल में जब भी महंगाई कम होती है तो सब लोग कहते हैं कि ब्याज दर को कम करो, और हमेशा हम जल्दी कम करते हैं और फिर से महंगाई बढ़ती है,
फिर आपको बढ़ानी पड़ती है,
और फिर से हमें बढ़ाना पड़ता है। तो मैंने इसलिए कहा कि हमें एक बार लड़ना चाहिए और इसको खत्म करना चाहिए। ये नहीं कि हम ब्याज दर को ऊंचा रखेंगे बियॉन्ड द पॉइंट दैट इज नेसेसरी, बट लेट अस एटलीस्ट कीप इट टिल द पॉइंट दैट इज नेसेसरी, नॉट सकम टू प्रेशर एंड से बिकॉज एवरीबडी। जो आपने पहला सवाल पूछा कि लोगों के लिए इंटरेस्ट रेट कब कम हो जाएगी. When people are saying that, they're saying it's a cost, and I recognize it's a cost.
Right.
But we shouldn't abandon the fight too early. Seeing 2-3 months of inflation coming down. I'm telling you, inflation just by जो statistical effects हैं, base effects हैं, महंगाई कम होती जाएगी until November. That is already built in.
Right, right. But do you feel worried, and not actually worried, but it's difficult being in your shoes because आपको practically हर चीज के लिए, right from the crisis in Gaza to the crude oil prices to the retail prices of टमाटर जो मंडी में बिक रहा है 80 रुपए किलो, हर चीज के लिए ultimately people will look up to RBI and ये चिंता या ये pressure because everybody will not understand the mathematics behind it. Do you feel worried about that, the expectation?
नहीं, that comes with the job. And you take the job knowing fully well कि हर जगह से pressure आएगी. एक तरह से waiver का pressure, दूसरी तरह से Gaza, Ukraine, domestic pressures, international pressures. That's part of the job.
Right. Sir, now जो SLR में कट किया गया है, and I understand the logic behind it, मैं बस ये समझना चाहता हूँ कि जैसे आपने खुद कहा, and it's a self-explanatory answer, कि अगर इस समय ब्याज की दरें घटती हैं तो दो पॉसिबिलिटीज हैं. एक, अगर महंगाई की दर फिर से बढ़ जाती है तो फिर से आपको शायद हो सकता है इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ाने पड़े. दैट इज वन फियर. नंबर 2 इज, आर यू ऑल्सो वरिड कि इससे वो डिमांड क्रिएट हो जाएगी मे बी विच इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड एट दिस पॉइंट इन द सिस्टम, और वो अपने आप में फिर महंगाई की दर को बढ़ावा देगी. सो यू वांट टू प्रिवेंट दैट बाय कटिंग SLR एंड नॉट द बेंचमार्क रेट्स.
सी, महंगाई कहाँ से आती है? एक तो मांग है और एक आपूर्ति है. तो अगर मांग आपूर्ति से ज्यादा होती है तब महंगाई बढ़ती है. तो अगर हम सप्लाई आपूर्ति को बढ़ा सकते हैं, then we have also from the real side some lower pressure on some disinflationary pressure. So we should. One of the problems in India is supply has been constrained. Right? These big projects haven't come on board. The roads that were going to be fully built out haven't been built out. So there is what we call supply pressure.
Right.
Supply is the constraint. So demand is going up, it's higher than supply, inflation is picking up. So if we can expand supply quickly without expanding demand as much, we're actually having a beneficial effect on inflation. Now what does it mean to increase supply? It means give credit to the projects that are nearly finished.
So basically productive credit.
Productive. So when we keep saying productive sectors of the economy, the code word is we want to increase supply. Now any economist will tell you you can't do that without increasing demand some.
Right.
But when you increase consumption demand, you're increasing demand without increasing supply.
Correct.
When we increase investment demand, we're increasing demand but also possibly increasing supply down the line. So our hope is that we expand investment demand. Okay. Now nothing is any of our actions, it's a blunt instrument. It is going to do a little bit of both, but we are hopeful we increase investment.
आपने और एक जो कंसर्न एक्सप्रेस की कि पिछले 5 साल में काफी प्रोजेक्ट्स जो अटके हुए थे, क्लियरेंसेस नहीं हो रहे थे, एंड पाइपलाइन वाज एक्चुअली चोक्ड. अब वो होना शुरू हुआ है. एटलीस्ट देयर आर अर्ली साइंस, एंड ऑब्वियसली सरकार की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है ग्रोथ, आपकी है इन्फ्लेशन मैनेज करना. सो डू यू थिंक दैट वो जो एक सिंक्रोनाइज एक्ट होना चाहिए था, हैव यू सीन दो साइंस इन द बजट जो अभी आया था, और बजट के अलावा भी, बजट के बाहर भी जो नई सरकार ने जो कदम उठाए हैं? Are you more comfortable now?
No, I think the budget targets जो फिक्स हुए हैं 4.1% deficit, it is a ambitious लेकिन responsible target. तो देखना पड़ेगा कि how that evolves. I say it's ambitious because growth has been weak. We need stronger growth. If it was a normal growth period, this would not be an ambitious target.
Right.
So let us see how growth plays out. And government has insisted again and again it will do what is necessary to achieve budgetary targets. So we should see there are some very good measures that have been suggested in the budget, such as an expenditure reform commission to look at the expenditures. GST, let us hope that all the parties agree and it is rolled out. These are all good things that can happen. On the project clearance, government कर रही है. अभी देखना पड़ेगा जब government clear करती है whether the project actually starts up and how fast it starts up. Sometimes there are further issues that have been dealt with, financing. Project promoter can't bring in equity, banks are unwilling to lend without more equity. Right. So we have to see. देखना पड़ेगा कि जो clearances अभी तक हुए हैं, whether they translate into production.
Right.
But there is some light there. There is some light. Some projects are starting up. Let us see whether the pace increases. Expectation of most people is towards the end of the year you will start seeing more of this growth coming in.
Right.
And as I said, that will add to supply. So I am hopeful that our stance, and you said our stance was inflation. No, our stance is growth and inflation.
Yeah, obviously.
But I think our stance is appropriate given where we are.
Very quick question before you go for break. Sir, bankers से आप क्या सुन रहे हैं? Because they know the pulse of the economy. You know, चाहे वो credit demand हो या फिर अलग-अलग sectors से जो concerns आ रही हो या फिर demands आ रही हो. What are you picking up from bankers at this point?
अगर numbers को देखो तो it's obvious and they say it also. Credit is yet to pick up strongly. Retail credit is quite strong, but corporate credit is still to pick up. But that is because there's a lot of euphoria which built up post-elections because of stable government. It takes some time for that euphoria to be translated into investment. You read in the papers every day, so-and-so is putting in 3,000 crores, so-and-so is putting in 4,000 crores. So that investment will start coming in. It takes, let us give 6 months for those investment ideas to start this thing. You should then see credit pick up. What we are doing on the SLR front, what we are doing in terms of these new sort of dispensations on long bonds, and on the structuring of loans, is to create the environment when that pickup comes, so that kind of pickup can be funded.
राइट सर, एक छोटा सा ब्रेक लेते हैं. ब्रेक के बाद बैंकिंग सेक्टर के कुछ और इश्यूज पर बातचीत करते हैं. रघुराम राजन बने हुए हमारे साथ, हम लौटते हैं एक ब्रेक के बाद. ब्रेक के बाद एक बार फिर से आपका स्वागत है. सर, नाउ आई स्पीक अबाउट द बैंकिंग पार्ट. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, हाल ही में ये जो एक किस्सा हुआ था सिंडिकेट बैंक का, दो इट्स अ वन ऑफ केस एंड आई अंडरस्टैंड दैट, एंड हम ये कोशिश भी नहीं कर रहे हैं कि इसे जनरलाइज किया जाए, बट ओवरऑल पीएसयू बैंक्स में गवर्नेंस जिस तरह से है, और इस तरह के कुछ एक केसेस 1-2 साल पहले भी आए थे. वी हैव सीन कुछ एक केसेस विल फॉल डिफॉल्ट के भी, जहां पे बैंक्स कुड हैव टेकन अ स्ट्रॉन्गर एक्शन, पर शायद नहीं हुआ. दैट्स व्हाट द परसेप्शन इज, द जनरल परसेप्शन इज. व्हाट इज योर व्यू ऑन दैट?
सो फर्स्ट, आई थिंक जनरलाइज नहीं करना चाहिए इस इंडिविजुअल केस से. देयर आर पीएसयू बैंक्स that are very active in pursuing defaulters and recovering money, and hats off to some of these PSU bank chairmen. So one cannot generalize. But that said, governance problem hai, it's not just criminal. Taking a bribe is a crime.
Right.
It's not just criminal, it's more the whole process of running a first-rate bank, right? And we have to make it easier for public sector chairmen to run a first-rate bank. And I don't think it's about ownership, but as you put it, it's about governance. From their perspective, they should have a longer time horizon. Coming in for 8 months or 1 year is you can't do anything. You can just blame the previous guy for all the bad loans that were made and make sure you don't do too much damage over the 1 year, and it's not enough. You need at least a 3, maybe even a 5-year horizon for public sector bank chairman. Second, while the chairman, if the finance ministry is far off, they have a fair amount of authority with only limited oversight, but a huge amount potentially of responsibility. Now, can we have some oversight, some better oversight on a real-time basis? Which means, can we strengthen the boards? If you strengthen the public sector boards, there are good people on those boards, but get more good people who can carry out their public responsibility of overseeing the actions of the executive of the board, then you have a good balance of responsibility. Similarly, and I think there is a discussion about this, can we separate the managing director from the chairman? Have a non-executive chairman who oversees the managing director.
Correct.
That's also good governance. So these are ways you put in checks and balances. But also you isolate the bank from extraneous influences. I mean, one of the concerns about the public sector sometimes is there are extraneous influences which come in, which drive the actions over and above what makes reasonable sense. This is not to say that public sector should follow the same norm for judging the project as the private sector. But at least you should ensure that even if it is somewhat less profitable because there are some good reasons to do it in the public interest, it shouldn't be that it is unprofitable.
So merit has to be kept in mind.
The merit of the project has to be kept in mind. You can make some trade-offs for the nation's interest, but it can't be a negative NPV project, a project which loses money that you go into. So quality of evaluation has to be even better than the private sector because you have thinner margins. You're willing to accept thinner margins, not worse. So there has to be improvement in quality and incentives throughout the system. Ultimately, I also think you have to be able to recruit more widely for the public sector. Right? So the issue of lateral entry becomes important. The public sector, we stopped recruiting for over a period of time. Correct. So there's a gap in the middle management.
Talent pool.
So we need to expand the talent pool. This is not to say that the interests of the incumbents should be denied or should be hurt. But there's plenty of room for growth in the public sector banks. Can you attract private sector people also into those banks? Which means that the compensation structure should improve somewhat. I don't say parity with the private sector because public sector there's some benefits. You're working for larger interest, but can you get better pay scales? So I think this is a whole package. Improve governance at the board level, give the board more powers to appoint, to dismiss, and so on. Get some separation between chairman and CEO, give the CEO more time, and improve the compensation package such that you attract a wider talent pool. Put all these in place, protect the banks from extraneous influences. I think you will see a sea change in the public sector bank.
Now, sir, obvious follow-up question would be कि ये करना कुछ हद तक संभव बैंक्स की खुद की जिम्मेदारी है. At the same time, you can make a lot of difference as a regulator. So, are you working on any such framework ki jisse some of the concerns that you mentioned, like maybe separating the post of non-executive chairman and MD, or maybe improving pay scales, or removing external influence as much as possible? Kuch had tak, they will need helping hand from RBI. So, see, are you working on a new framework?
This is something that is ye government ki zimmedari hai, primarily.
But you govern.
We can advise the government because government owns the banks. Changes in governance structure is something the government has to do. It's not us. We can certainly advise the government, and we have been advising the government. We commissioned a report, the PJ Nayak committee report. We've shared that with the government. So government knows our views on this. And the government has to take a call. After all, these are government-owned banks, and the government has been elected to look after these.
But they can do better than what they are doing right now.
Well,
they can be more proactive.
Government is looking at these issues. I think the government is taking a fresh look at the whole governance issue. Now, let me also remind viewer that in 2008 there was a sense the public sector banks were doing much better than the private sector banks. Okay, and so at that time there was no sense of urgency of changing anything.
Right.
So things change. Today NPAs are much higher in the public sector banks than the private sector banks. Some because the public sector banks went more into infrastructure,
correct,
which the private sector banks didn't. But this is a good time to look at the whole set of issues.
लेकिन सर आपने NPA की बात की and you obviously have a very close and at the same time bird's eye view on the overall banking scenario globally also and in Indian perspective also obviously. Fault line as far as Indian banking system is concerned, इस समय आपको लगता है एक NPA है? Is that the fault line right now in Indian banking?
I don't think this is a matter of crisis or संकट की बात नहीं है. It's not a
because there are a lot of noises, you know, and आपने भी, I'm sure आपने भी देखे होंगे reports, some of these reports, especially about the fiscal health of PSU banks and all. आपका view क्या है इसमें?
No. So, is there a problem? Yes. Is it a unresolvable problem, you know, of crisis dimensions? No.
Very quickly, sir, because we are running short of time. As far as willful defaults are concerned, एक जो general perception है वो ये है कि banks sometimes let them go very easily. But I'm not talking about that. My question is, are you jointly working with SEBI जिससे उनके लिए you know, going ahead and raising funds from capital markets become little more challenging, little more difficult? Because they don't have a strong track record इसका अच्छे तरीके से इस्तेमाल करने का या फिर इसे productively निवेश करने का. Is that in the process?
I think we have to find a way that borrowers who don't utilize the money as promised. I'm not talking about making mistakes.
Right.
If I invest and it goes bad, that's a mistake. We have to have people who take risks. We should not sort of blame them for taking the risk. But if they divert the money to some other enterprise that they're running, or they falsify the books and misappropriate the money or something which is not you know, reasonable business practice, then the system should be alerted. And they should not find it easy to go and raise money yet again for some other venture.
True.
So this concept of willful defaulter, if we can broaden it through the system and ensure they can't raise money through capital markets, they can't raise money again for some time. And everybody knows that they're a willful defaulter and they can't be lent to. Now,
ये कब तक हो सकता है? How soon this?
We're working on it. I mean, concept of willful defaulter already exists.
Yeah, of course.
It exists in the banking system. Now, we're talking about whether it can be expanded elsewhere also.
Since we are running short of time, I'll club 2 or 3 points in my last question. One, we have seen very good run up Indian markets में, और in fact जब से आपने कार्यभार संभाला है तब से एक जो sentiment create हुआ है, that is still continuing thanks to the new government also. Number 2, gold imports, though government has to take that call, लेकिन at this point what's your view on that? And third, globally इस समय जो situation है, and I'm talking about the financial situation, be it China or even US, because we have seen a consistent tapering signal from US. इन पर आपका view क्या है? Starting with Indian markets, do you think they're running ahead of expectation?
No, look, I think the election was a game changer in perception. Election के बाद ये जो sentiment है बहुत मजबूत हो गई है. I think we have to wait and see. Things don't change overnight. Government is taking actions. There is close monitoring of actions from the top. Let us see how things move. I think on the gold import side, current account deficit has come down. I think whatever actions we take have to be measured. You can't overnight change things. And we still haven't seen interest rates rising in the rest of the world.
Right.
And nobody knows what will happen when those rates rise. I think India is well prepared, but we can't be certain. So I think it's important to see exports rise to see a strengthening of exports, to see the current account deficit attain some stability, and then take steady measures to reduce the curbs on gold, to reduce the tariffs and the other curbs. But anything has to be steady, not one-off. On the world itself, I mean, every year you think it's going to get stronger, and every year you're disappointed. This year again, beginning of the year, everybody thinks it's going to get stronger, and then you have the US first quarter, which is terrible.
Right.
So let's see. I think the hope once again is the world is strengthening. Wait and see.
Right.
I mean, I'm more confident about India now strengthening
That's
than
a good news.
about the world strengthening.
Absolutely, sir. Thanks a lot for speaking to us. And जैसा आपने promise किया था, आपने हिंदी में हमें काफी बातचीत की है. So next time I hope it will be 100%.
हाँ, वो 100% लक्ष्य है, देखते हैं.
चलिए, हम उम्मीद करते हैं कि आप महंगाई पर, ग्रोथ पर और हिंदी तीनों पर अपना लक्ष्य अचीव करें. Thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you.